this opportunity for granted, being on the line with someone whose net worth is in the probably tens of millions of dollars. And he talk about projects over managing over $600 million, different $80 million projects, $26 million projects. All right, this is not an everyday conversation that you're going to have right here. So we need you to get the questions together so that this next 30 to 40 minutes do not be in vain for you, the listener, the person that decided to come on board. So the first question I want to ask you is, and I'm gonna go to this question right here. Now, you had a beginning in the engineering world. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
And so you switched to entrepreneurship. So what is your advice for someone who's been in a position for quite a while, but they are thinking about switching their pivot and switching to something else? What kind of advice would you give to that individual, and what are some principles that you would recommend for them to carry out?
Yeah, no, that's a good question, Joseph. And I think part of it is, each of us, there's something in your gut. Each of you have it. Otherwise, you probably wouldn't be on this call and then this meeting. And I want to encourage you to kind of listen and trust your gut a little bit, that you're a spirit person, right? And so for me, even though I started off in corporate, I think for me, it was the right move because it brought some stability. Right. I had a kid, right when I was in college. So that motivated me. It's like, oh my God, I got to finish college now. Jeez. I got to make some money so I've got a baby or a wife, man, I got to support. So going to corporate America and working was the right step at that time. But I've always had the entrepreneurial heart. But at that point in time, I've always prayed for wisdom. And so I was wise enough here to, kind of save up a little money and work hard and continue kind of develop, my base of education, right? So I went back to school and got my master's in electrical engineering and MBA and so forth, and keep up. It was just constant kind of building that foundation, knowing that I always had that entrepreneurial itch. It really never really went away. But I was still working hard there in this case for AT&T and then Eli Lilly and Roche. And it gave me a really, really good solid foundation. Now, since I started having kids early, that was cards I was dealt with, you know what I mean? And all of us have our own cards. I say, well, geez, man, in my 40s, man, I'm going to be able to take more risk. And that's what I did. So I was like, okay, kids are up and older and going to college now. And, I can maybe and out of the house now, I can take a little bit more risk. And that's where the opportunity afforded itself for me with some early buyout options. It was like, hey, look, let's go for it. What worst case, I got the credentials, I can go back to corporate America, right? That's how I kind of looked at it. And so
let me cut you off for a second. So, and going through this transition, being in engineering, of course, you had this entrepreneur bug, and so I know your father. I know that he was a man that owned some properties and some real estate at one time. Would you say that planted a seed inside of you at a young age, seeing your father manage properties and say, you know what, I could do that myself?
Yeah, that's a good point. It did. It did. And on the other hand, I saw some of the struggles with it as well. You know what I mean? And so I always would say to myself, man, I want to do something a little bit different. But I did like the idea that I learned from him of having another income stream. And also I learned, the appreciation of real estate. So yes, it was a motivation. It was also a motivation to do it a little bit differently. As well, because it can be a hard field, and it really is a hard field. But we were able to learn some of the right ways to do it and some of the wrong ways to do it. Part, through seeing his experiences as well.
Okay, so would you agree that planted the seed in your?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So I have some questions that I'm going to go to here that they're starting to send them in the chat, in the virtual conference chat. I want to ask one more though. So going through that transition, did you, one of the nuggets that you shared, I hope everyone wrote this nugget down, was about trusting your gut. And for those that tune into Wisdom Wednesday, for those of you that's been watching the wisdom videos that I put out over time, you know when I talk about my wife, and that's one of her favorite wisdom scriptures about that Ecclesiastes 4:22. The go with that gut feeling. So you said trusting your gut, but at, was your gut telling you to jump out into the deep? Was your gut telling you to jump out into the deep, or was you just sitting back, rationalizing in your mind and saying, it just makes sense for me to be a business owner, or it just makes sense for me to forsake what I have invested so much time and energy in trying to get this degree that I have children now and I have to provide for, so I'm gonna take another path?
Excuse me. I'm not sure if I fully understand your question. Can you repeat the question again on that?
Okay, so I was leaning back to the point of where did the line come between trusting your gut and making a rational decision? Let me just summarize what I was trying to say.
Yeah, you know what? That's a great question. I think the reality is, each of us have, we have a personal relationship with our God and Father. And I think part of it for me was just, doing a lot of meditating, but also seeking a lot of counsel there as well. I'm a big fan and believer of trying to seek counsel and wisdom and, I mean, so and to look back at it, you guys, I can't say I really got it. It wasn't really done perfectly, like my very first deal, which you didn't see a picture of that project. I went out, stepped out on a limb. I was a risk taker. I still am to some degree, and bought this property, you guys, and oh my God, had a lot of debt on it. It was $1.2 million worth of debt. And I did it the wrong way. I have to admit, I trusted the inspection report that was done by the seller. The seller, showed me all these leases, and I didn't validate them. They were leases, but half of them were with just bad residents, drug dealers, and I mean, it was just bad. So we had to evict over half of them. The inspection results were not quite accurate. There was underground plumbing leaks, and so I started off losing $6,000 a month.
Ooh.
So I don't want to make it seem like it's like, oh, gee, but at the end of the day, but I learned something, and what I learned from that was there's another way of financing these deals. So that's how I stumbled across tax credits, because I probably would not have fallen into low-income housing tax credits if it were not for those issues. It became a survival issue. So one big lessons learned, you guys, for me, I could tell you multiple stories like that, is that, yeah, sometimes, things may not go perfect and you could have done some things better, but look on the positive side. They actually pushed me into a whole nother space that I otherwise may not have went into at that time, that turned out to be a huge blessing, because that same project, once I found out about tax credits, and this was back in 2008, 9 time frame, that propelled me into a whole new different space. That same project today, I always had the vision. A vision was going to be a senior community, gated senior community, and today it's a gated senior community. And guess what? I have zero debt on that property. The tax credits allowed me to pay it all off. I got everything fixed on it, upgraded everything. The property cash flows beautifully. It just so happens this year comes out what we call the tax credit compliance period. And, I'll make several $1 million off of it. So we'll sell it, re-syndicate it, whatever. So, I think the part of that, part of the answer to your question is, it's hard to say when's that perfect time. But, I can tell you for sure, if you have it in your gut every day, it's almost like, my wife is planting vegetables and so forth. And we were just talking the other day, like, well, how do we know when the green beans are going to be ready for harvesting? And there's just something there, right? Of knowing when it's that harvest season and you start seeing the tomatoes and you start seeing green beans pop up. And it's like, okay, it's getting close. And that each of you feel that like I did in my gut. It was like, man, the timing started to feel right. I'm about to have this baby. And you just feel it. You sense it. You feel it. You're doing what you're doing right now. You're getting information. Don't wait until you get 100% of it because it'll probably never happen. But you're doing your due diligence. You're counting your costs. You got a plan. Don't expect for it to be perfect. And then you just feel like, man, it's time to have this baby. It's time to make that leap. And then when you make the leap, just expect you're going to hit some, you're going to have some pitfalls. You're going to break a leg or sprain an ankle or whatever. But it's not going to put you out, but it's going to be a learning opportunity to be better. And that's kind of what's happened to me throughout my entire entrepreneurial experience. And every season, there's just different challenges. Today I'm going through a whole series of different challenges, that you go through when you go into that next level of growth and whatever. And, you just go through them and you always look back and you learn from it and keep improving.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We got some questions here in the chat. So, this is when they have a saying that once the mind expands, it can never go back to its original state. And so right now, just in this casual conversation with an individual, I'm not even going to ask him. I'm not even about to guesstimate. I probably already did just a little about 10 minutes ago. We're not even about to guesstimate this man's net worth. All right. We're not even about to do that. But as you can see from the developments and the projects that he put on screen, all right, it's up there. All right. So take heed. There are breadcrumbs and there's nuggets that's being shared as he's just been having a regular conversation. One of the questions that we have is, what is the process to set up a consultation? What phases do you assist with? So someone in the chat wants to know, what's the process of setting up a consultation with you?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so here's kind of how I've tried to kind of manage my time and also the desire to kind of help and give back and so forth. So we currently, as a business, we've made a strategic decision to work with a few emerging developers, right? And there are some criteria that we have for what that emerging developer has to be able to do and bring to the table. Because we know that there's people at different stages, and I know I can't necessarily help out everyone all at the same time, because my personal there's a personal time that I give that's just free, right? It's just, hey, like what I'm doing right now. And I'll take a call or two or, within my schedule every week, and I'll try to help out each of you, right? So there's no payment for that. There's no bill that I send out for that piece. But at the same time, you kind of get what you can get for that short period of time that we're talking, having dialogue. But for the emerging developer that we start entering into a contractual relationship with, we're looking for those here that can already obtain site control, and the projects have to be at some level of scale. Like if you're wanting to, and there's nothing wrong with starting off with single family homes and that there's various ways to get to this real estate game. I'm probably not the best resource if you're looking at just one or two or three single family homes, right? There's other folks that can probably help you out even better than me. I started that way and kind of got out of it. So our development sizes, now we do like clustered groups of homes as a tax credit deal. So the one we're closing on next month will be about 33 homes. So if any of you are interested in a tax credit or light tech type development and you already have site control, which is one of the hardest pieces to get, or you're close to getting site control for a piece of land, 1 acre, 2 acre, 3 acres for an apartment complex or clusters, group of single family homes, then I could certainly be a good resource and partner for you and consultant for you because we can help you develop that. So we got a deal in Kentucky that we're working on right now as part of the Russell Place of Promise. It's over about 30th and Martin Luther King area. And so, you know, I'm down in Louisville area for those are in Louisville. I'm down there kind of a little bit more often now. I'll be more than happy to, you know, connect there with you. So, but do we do work here, consultative work? The answer is yes. Do we do kind of partnering, like a general partner type structure? The answer is yes. You know, will we build it for you and you develop it? Yeah. So there's a lot of ways of how we engage. But you have to be able to have something that you're bringing to the table as well in terms of, you know, how that structure would work. So I know it's kind of broad, but if you have more specific questions, you can always email me or text me. I'll be more than happy to share more detail with you.
Okay. We have another one. The next one is I think you kind of already answered it, based off of, you know, your response that you're not necessarily the person to turn to for someone that's just trying to just deal with some small single family homes. But someone actually asked, what is the advice that you would give someone that wants to get into entrepreneurship or real estate? They're just in the beginning stages and they want to hop into entrepreneurship as a real estate investor. What kind of advice would you give to that person?
Yeah, so I would say certainly doing things like you're doing right now, asking questions and being around and, you know, and shadowing. You know, there's a few people that have just said, hey, Garrett, can I, you know, there's a day or two, man, I just like to shadow and you just kind of see what your world looks like, right? So I encourage each of you, there are so many ways to learn, but you got to invest in yourself, right? Invest time shadowing, invest part of your time reading. Um, you know, a big part of this real estate game is that you got to be able to have and utilize leverage, right? With some debt financing. That's kind of what the big boys and girls do. You know what I mean? You have some, so in order to have some, being able to obtain some debt, right, for some of these bigger projects, you got to know what your individual kind of personal net worth is. And so, you know, start Googling information, start building up your financial statements. You know, start off simple like I did, just get an LLC. I think somebody talked about that earlier, created, you know, so that you can start kind of getting the basic business fundamentals down. And then be real with yourself on your credit. I mean, if you got really, really bad credit, you know, you may have to start off maybe doing things like wholesaling. And there's nothing wrong with that. You know, if you're a good connector of people that have land and somebody that has money to buy the land, or a developer like myself that can buy the land and develop it, you know, you can make a fee off of being a connector. You know what I mean? You know, so leverage your assets. You know what I mean? If you're good at Excel, I do Excel spreadsheets every day, almost all day. In some cases, I'm putting business models together. If you're good at that, you know, start there and, you know, and market your services, you know, to be able to put financial performance together. So I think just start off with what you're really, really darn good at. If you're really good at construction, you can get into the field here through the construction route. So that's what I would advise. Find out what you're really good at, what you're passionate with, if it's law, engineering, construction, accounting, finance, management. Find out what you're good at. That's your entryway into this space. Then from there, you're just building knowledge and you're building networks, people like me and many, many others out there. And the last piece I want to give you too is, you know, think big too. I mean, you know, you don't have, I mean, trust me, it's a lot easier. And I got this confirmed with even somebody helped me even think bigger. I was over at looking for about $5 to $10 million investment. And this guy came to me and said, Gary, think even bigger than that. He said, man, it's a lot easier. He says, easier for me to get you 50 to $60 million than it is for me to get you 10 5 to 10 million. And and the light bulb went off because I was telling other folks, guys, it was easier for me to close on that $25 million project than to refinance a home at $1 million. I was like, man, what the heck? Or 500,000. Getting $100,000 line of credit was harder than getting a $25 million loan. So the moral of that is always keep thinking bigger. You know what I mean? That as big as your vision is, you know what I mean? That's kind of what you'll be able to take in, So have a big vision. Start with a big vision. And then, it's okay if people tell you no on that part, but you never know. You might get a yes.
Think big, think global.
There you
Think
go.
big, think global. Here we go. So the next question is, what are some good strategies to use to raise private funding for someone new in real estate?
Yeah, someone new, you're gonna have to partner, basically. You're gonna have to partner with somebody, to be honest with you. People, a lot of investors are looking for track records and um very first deal I did, man, I was trying to sell credits. It was about $5 million worth of credits. I had to end up paying this. I had to end up partnering with somebody. He got a big piece of the pie. He made over $500,000. But was it worth it? Yeah, in hindsight, it probably was worth it. So, it's your team. If you're new into it, read, learn enough. And your big thing is going to be, okay, I got to bring on some partners. You got to create some credibility with these investors, with your team, which is bigger than just yourself, right? Understand what you bring to the table, like I just talked about, but also know what you're not good at and get the right people and partners. You're going to do a big sales job. So get the right team and partners and where they can bring complementary background skill sets to you. And it then becomes a whole lot easier with raising those big dollars.
There we go. There we go. Next question. What was your breakout moment as an entrepreneur? So what was that breakout moment? How did you jump from a small business owner to making huge deals with the local government as a premier developer?
I think probably the breakout maybe was my second deal. The first one it was a tough one, and I was just like many of you or some of you here, you say, man, how do I get started? And how do I raise that initial capital? I mean, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of skepticism. But then I got it, and then I had to deliver. So I put a whole lot of time and effort in making sure that first project was a success. And still learning along the way. But since I had to pay out a whole lot, I didn't really make a whole lot per se. But then on the second deal, I took some risk, and I said, hey, look, it was a property right across the street. It was an existing building, 48 apartments, and it was horribly ran, and it was just bad, and so the health department shut the building down, and I was like, okay, let me see if I can buy this property here from the owner. I did it. Fortunately, I mean, in wisdom today, I probably wouldn't do it the same way I did it this one, but I'll never forget, it was $400,000. I bought that building, empty building, prior to even knowing if I was going to get tax credits. 400, and I sold it back to myself for the deal for like 600,000. So I made a couple $100,000 off of it. But the project, I demolished all those buildings, was successful and getting it built. The construction, I partnered with somebody who knew what they were doing. That went extremely well. Leased up, it was a beautiful building. In honor of my mother, I wanted an indoor swimming pool because I remember her complaining about going to the YMCA, and she was on the larger side and older side and talking about all the young fit women around her going into the pool. So so I said, I'm going to do an indoor pool for these seniors and have an exercise kind of theme to it. And I mean, the project was a huge success, and And I think that's then would start kind of propelling me to more opportunity. And also now I had that credibility, like, oh, this guy and his company, they know what they're doing. Look at this. They've done 2 of them and they're both been hugely successful. And then success brings more success and more deals. And so it was that second one, you know, you got to get a few things kind of going. You build up some credibility. So then, you inevitably have some mistakes along the way, and I have as a company as well. But you got enough successes there to kind of carry you over in the future when you may have a few little slip ups here and there too.
Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. The next question is, can you speak a bit more on your assisted living homes? All right, so we got like 2 or 3 questions by this one particular person. One of the first one is, can you speak a little bit more on your assisted living homes? The second one afterwards is, do you have a particular niche?
Yeah, so on the assisted living home, that was the project here with the it's 130 units, right? They're not individual homes, but they're part of a big multi-family development. And it's a unique, there's probably about 10 of us in the whole US that really have done these. And we all go through the same financing. It's a really unique financing structure with one of Warren Buffett's companies called AHP, Affordable Housing Partners. And they're about all the tax credits. It's a really, really complex deal structure. But at a high level, it uses the Warren Buffett company buys the tax credits. They get a big share of the profits. These projects push out a lot of cash. So they're very profitable because they're using Medicaid, Medicare income to provide the services, the food coverage costs, and the housing, the rental, the housing assistance piece. So every state has a kind of a tiered payout schedule for for those that need assisted living versus kind of nursing home care. And some states do not have they don't have the daily rate structure to make these deals feasible like Indiana has. So Indiana is one of the few states that has the daily rate structure. Ohio just opened that up this year. So we're looking to go into Ohio probably next year. Kentucky doesn't have it yet, but it's been discussed in your legislature. We're waiting for Kentucky to open up, hopefully maybe next year. So yeah, that project portfolio, we call our assisted living portfolio, is absolutely huge, and we want to put more time and resources into it over time. It is an opportunity zone business, so a whole lot to that, a whole heck of a lot. But if Kentucky opens up, or any state that you guys are in, a way to partner here with somebody like me is to say, hey, look, I already know we're looking for 4 to 6 acres of land in a qualified census tract, or we call QCT. But it has to be kind of up and coming. Like you would want your mom or grandma to stay in that particular qualified census tract. But so there's some very specific criteria that we're looking for on that. And if that site is all about site location, and that's what we do. Now the second question is related to that. Yeah, I'm a believer in kind of niche playing, but even within that niche, having some diversification. So our niche is urban development. I'm not really trying to do rural development, but it can be small, medium, and large city urban development. And our other niche is affordable and workforce housing. So like the 120% AMI, average median income area or less. So that's the niche that we play in. And within that niche, we have various portfolios like the affordable assisted living, single parent, homeless, aging out of foster care, and then the traditional kind of, working family. So that's how we structure our business.
Okay, and one more from that same line of questions. Do you mostly see more need for private rooms as opposed to shared rooms?
Yeah, we see more need right now for a private room versus the shared, but the shared, I mean, there's a need out there. So when we're modeling those assisted living projects, we kind of model it based on the number of folks that we're guesstimating through market studies on the various tiers, tier 1, 2, and 3, and then private pay versus non-private pay. And then kind of a shared room for like two people, a caregiver or a spouse, versus kind of just a one a single unit, a single person type of unit.
Okay, okay. So we have one more question. Unless some more come through, we are down at the last. I know he's already went past the 45 minutes, so we're in the 15-minute, 10-minute zone now before our next speaker. But speaking about finding partners, what should we be looking for? Like when you're trying to find a specific partner to, help you get to that next level in real estate, what are some of the qualifications that you look for in a successful partnership?
Yeah.
What are the
So
and then what before you answer that, what are the questions to ask and the skill sets to go along with it?
So part of it, you got to understand what you bring to the table, what you're lacking. Are you following me? So I start there. And so, you know, so when I first started, I mean, I knew I was good at putting Excel spreadsheets together, right? I mean, I majored in finance and, I could do that. But what I didn't have was an experienced developer who's been there, done that, nor a contractor, not an architect. So I started trying to fill in those gates, those gaps, I should say, of what I needed. And then I'll try to, then it's kind of word of mouth, man. I want to find out who the best were out there in the market, like who is really good at construction, and I've wanted, but prior to that, I want to get an architect so I can have somebody can come up with some plans and ideas that the general contractor could at least estimate numbers on. So it kind of started there. I wanted a developer consultant who knew something about tax credits, right? So I started building my team, but I had to bring something to the table. What I brought to the table was, hey, I got a site, that I put money down on. And that meant something to a developer consultant or whatever. So I would say you want to do enough to kind of find a site, and you might have to work with a real estate broker. But if you have some money that you can put earnest money down, that's great. If you don't, then you want to start finding a partner or a person that believes in your ability to at least have finance you through that level, right, of finding a site. So anyway, there's a lot more there to it. Is because your questions are going to be tailored to what your need is, and your need is going to be based upon what you bring to the table. But those are things there that wisdom, which is the whole sort, the main content of this conference here. That's where wisdom comes into play. You guys do a self-assessment, know who you are, what you have, what you don't, how much money you have, how much you don't today. And then that's going to be kind of where wisdom kind of guides you in terms of, okay, I need to plug the hole in with this person. Somebody that has cash, but they're, too busy right now to maybe spend it or utilize it, but they want to turn a profit around, or they want to help somebody, or whatever it may be. But I would certainly start there and don't give up. Be persistent. Ask questions. You have not because you ask not. And so with that, I'll give it back over to you, Joseph. And
Okay, we got one more question I want to ask you. So now this is called the multi-million dollar question right here. Are you ready for me, Gary?
yes, sir.
What would you say are the 3 keys to your success?
3 keys. I would say, yeah, that's a good question. Let me just put the things that this come first to my mind. I think there's a persistence there's something about me where I refuse to give up. That's a persistence piece. I'll give a real short example. Just 2 days ago, my grandson and I, we went to a park, and there was this big old huge hill, that people used to sled down and so forth. This little 6-year-old man, he ran up this hill. He wanted to beat me, and he did beat me. He beat me. And I got about halfway up, man, and he kept on running. I'm like tired. I'm like breathing hard, and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can make it up this daggone freaking hill. And he kept on running and laughing. Come on, Papa, you can do it. And I was like, I got 3/4 of the way up. I was about to turn down because he was ready to run down because he was already up there playing around, waiting on me. And he started running down, and I said, nope, I'm not. I'm going to make it up this hill. That sort of thing about my health. It's like, oh, geez, I don't want to have a heart attack. That'll be just devastating, right? But I say, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. That persistence is something that has been in me for years. And I think that's been one of the key drivers. Of course, I did. I made it up that daggone hill, you guys. I'm about ready to pass out, but I made it up. And I made it back down to, I'm here today. So, but persistence is one big one. I think another one here is, faith. You know what I mean? I'm just a believer, and I put all my trust, in God, and I just, but I think that's carried me through even those times where I just wondered if I made the right decision. You know what I mean? It's like, man, I know in my heart God told me to do this and told me to buy that apartment complex that had all those issues, but it all turned out well. There's that faith which ties to persistence. And the other one that just kind of sticks out, you guys, is that old traditional kind of hard work. I want to throw things like it, maybe, things like my networking, asking questions, building a good, wise counsel around me. I think that's part of it. But I lump all that in the hard work piece. Man, the thirst for knowledge, I still have that today. You know what I mean? I still want to learn today. I know a lot, but man, there's still things I want to learn more of. So that thirst for knowledge with humility and humbleness, and I think those are the things that have been a major contributor to my success.
Hey, listen here, y'all. I asked a question for 3 keys to success, and it led to 6 or 7. That was amazing right there. Listen. If you didn't write those nuggets down, I'm going to go ahead and share them with you real quickly. All right. Keys to success: persistence, faith, hard work. Now, I'm going to stop at hard work. I've interviewed thousands of business owners, entrepreneurs from the shoe shine stand in the car industry. All right here, talking to a man who's worth, I would probably say, a couple $100 million right now, having this live conversation, and hard work is the #1 answer. But what I say is, sometimes the hardest working people are the least paid. So now you got these other key ingredients, if you will, to add to season, to put extra season in here. And that's persistence, that's faith, that's networking, wise counsel, a thirst for knowledge, and humility. We know the Most High ain't dealing with prideful people. So any last words in closing, Gary? You have been a treat to us today. We are so thankful that you took out that time. We sit back here. I mean, how many times are you going to come across and have a conversation with a man that's worth millions, tens to hundreds of millions of dollars, that's sitting down having a regular conversation, and he's talking to you so humble and so down to earth, like he's a person that's just kind of just making his way through life? There we go. We got some hearts over there. We got the hearts coming up. They love it. They love it. We appreciate you for coming on board with the Wisdom and Wealth movement. Any last words that you want to share before we go ahead and move on to our next speaker?
No, I just want to, thank each of you for taking the time to listen as well. Thank you, Joseph, for hosting, and with Andrea, you've done here as well. Just a phenomenal sister. And so you guys, this was a blessing to me. Sometimes it just helps to release and talk things out. But that's how it works. And so I just thank you guys for listening, asking questions, and I hope to hear from some of you in the future as well.
There we go. There we go. Let's go ahead and put a round of applause